I fell in love early in high school. My boyfriend missed the college entrance examination to save me. When we broke up, I pretended to mock him. A high school diploma, is he worthy of me? Later, he became a new rich man in the city. I had no way to borrow money, so I went to his house with red eyes to ask for help. He looked indifferent. I can't see that you would still commit yourself to someone with a high school diploma. 01 My family went bankrupt. My father jumped from the second floor and broke his leg, and my mother cried heartbreakingly. Arya, please help your parents think of a way. Are you going to watch your father jump off the building? I wanted to laugh a little. A person who is afraid of heights would actually choose to end his life by jumping off the building. Moreover, it was on the second floor. This self-torture trick only worked for my mother. But there was no way. My family's investment failed this time, and the hole that needed to be filled was too big. All the relatives and friends around me were borrowed by me, and now they avoid me like snakes and scorpions. 02 Before knowing that my father jumped off the building, I was working 3 jobs alone. While posting flyers in the parking lot, I met the person I least wanted to see again in my life. Sean, my ex-boyfriend who I dumped. He got out of the Rolls-Royce, his high-end leather shoes customized abroad were polished to a shine, and his suit was 3-dimensionally tailored, which made him look even more upright. His face hadn't changed, but his temperament was completely different. When I met his gaze, I subconsciously wanted to escape, but he said in a cold tone, "Do you know how much you will be fined for posting flyers in the parking lot?" Fuck. I turned around and showed a flattering smile. "I'm sorry, boss, you are so generous. Can you pretend that you didn't see it and let me go this time?" I deliberately squeezed my expression, hoping that he wouldn't recognize me. Unfortunately, he seemed to hate me deeply. He said in a mocking tone, "Arya, what's wrong? You're doing well now, but you don't even recognize your ex-boyfriend who you dumped." I looked down at the shrunken t-shirt and the washed-out jeans. After so many years, some people are still so vicious. I forced a smile and wanted to leave immediately. Sean looked at the things in my hand, his eyes became even colder. "You said that you won't be with someone with a high school education, and you said that you will have a better future in the future. Why, your better future is to post flyers in the parking lot." Sure enough, he was talking about something irrelevant. I knew I was in the wrong about what happened back then, and I didn't want to argue. "Look at what you look like now." Sean was interrupted by a voice before he finished speaking. It was the security guard. "Who is there? We are not allowed to post flyers here." With a roar, I ran away in fear. Before leaving the parking lot, I looked back at Sean's expression. He stood there with a gloomy face, raised his hand and tore the flyer I accidentally stuffed into his hand into pieces. I didn't complete the KPI for today's small advertisement, and was severely belittled by my ex-boyfriend. When I got home, I ran into my mother crying in front of my father's bed. "Very good, all the bad things happened at the same time. Husband, what should we do? If this continues, our family will have to go out to drink the northwest wind. It depends on whether Arya can think of a solution." Thinking of me at this time? I was very curious. What do they want me to do? The next second, I heard my mother say, "By the way, I met Sean a few days ago, Arya's ex-boyfriend, and he seems to be doing very well now." 03 I froze in place and met my mother's eyes. Before I could say anything, she threw herself in front of me. "Arya, do you still remember that ex-boyfriend? He is doing very well now. Do you want to go back to him, find him?" My mother lowered her eyes and immediately fell silent. It seems that she still hasn't forgotten that she didn't agree with us being together at the beginning. Even when Sean came with a gift, she drove him out with a basin of water. Who would have thought that he would be doing so well now? "Arya, why don't you go and beg him? It was all my fault back then. Didn't he love you very much?" "I loved you once," I said calmly. "But now it's all over." Just after I said I wanted to break up. At night, I lay in bed tossing and turning, and Sean's face was in my mind. Relatives called again to collect the debt, asking my family to pay up quickly. My parents had foresight and left my phone number. So now my phone is bombarded with calls, but my parents are still sleeping soundly. It was raining heavily outside, and even many branches were blown off. I turned off my phone, and the room finally returned to peace. Suddenly I remembered that the day I broke up with Sean was also a rainy day. It was as heavy as the rain on the day when Guo Lu asked to see the Queen. At that time, we were sitting in the restaurant, and Sean's hand was still in a cast. On the day of the college entrance examination, an out-of-control car rushed over. If Sean hadn't pushed me away in time, I would have died on the spot. But Sean was still seriously injured and even stayed in the ward for several days, missing the college entrance examination. He raised his head and smiled at me, with dimples at the corners of his mouth looming. Under the light, the teardrop mole at the corners of his eyes was even more charming. I fell in love with him purely because of this face. But this face will never be seen again. "Sean, let's break up." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly raised his head and the veins on the back of his hand popped out. "Arya, this joke is not funny. We agreed not to use breaking up to test each other and not to treat it as a joke. I'm not testing you, nor am I joking. I'm serious. I want to break up with you. It seemed that I had used up all my strength to say this. I could only support myself with my hands to avoid falling on the seat. What's the reason? I got the admission letter from a university. I will study for a bachelor's and master's degree. We will be different in the future. Sean put down the fork in his hand and the whole person looked depressed. Arya, I can still take the college entrance examination next year. I will come to you then. Of course, Sean is so outstanding. He has always been the first in the school and has won many competition awards. But because of this, his life cannot be ruined in my hands. I tried to put on a proud look and said the most vicious words, I'm not a slut. I'm with a high school graduate. I will never forget that look. Shock, disappointment, but no resentment. I would rather he hate me, even if he slaps me and calls me shameless. He was hurt because of me, but I cruelly abandoned him. In order to provoke his anger, I took out 1,000 yuan from my bag and threw it in his face. The money fell to the ground, attracting the attention of everyone around. But Sean did not move, but clenched his fists. Breakup fee, don't bother me anymore, I will find someone better. When I left the restaurant, I heard his roar, Arya, you will regret it. I will regret it, but I can only keep going. The memory was interrupted by a knock on the door. It was my second uncle who came to the door. My mother opened the door, and several people stood at the door and started arguing. We really have no money now, can you give us a few days grace? If you have no money, you don't know how to find a job. You two are idle at home, and let your daughter go out to work hard, right? My mother stood there without saying a word. My parents are both full of love brains. It is said that two love brains will be very happy when they get together. But no one knows how much their offspring suffer. When I was a child, I watched them loving each other with the emotion of not caring about my life or death. You can go out for a candlelight dinner on Valentine's Day and leave a 5-year-old child at home. We went to Europe for our wedding anniversary. I was 10 years old and stayed at home alone for half a month. I was so hungry that I ate instant noodles every day, because my father promised my mother to be a little princess forever. My mother has been unemployed at home. Even now, my father doesn't want my mother to go out to work. My mother is also at ease to be a happy woman. Can you wake up a little? You made a hole and let your daughter clean up the mess. My second uncle scolded my parents and asked them to pay back the money within a week. The bank has come several times. I guess if it continues like this, our family will have to live on the streets. My mother stood there silently, and the only solution she came up with was me. Arya, you are the only one left for mom and dad. You must have a way, right? Where is Sean? He is so rich now. Can you ask him for help? My mother's coercion made me tired. I picked up my coat and went out. Before I knew it, I walked to the place where I broke the promise with Sean before. I remember one time, I was busy discussing homework with the class monitor and ignored him. That night, he said nothing. When we passed the park, he took me directly to the grove. In the grove, I was trapped between his chest and the tree trunk. The hot kiss fell, with a sweet and sour smell. After the kiss, his anger finally subsided, and he hugged me tightly, burying his head in my neck. Sean, didn't I say you were possessive? He looked like he didn't care about anything, and he always had a stern face. In fact, he was the one who would get jealous if I said one more word to others. That's not my possessiveness. In the night, his hoarse voice penetrated from my ears and touched my heart. It's because I was worried that you talked to others and forgot to hold my hand. I stood in the park for a long time before I held my phone and pulled out the people in the blacklist. I don't know if Sean's number has changed. I tried to dial. In less than 3 seconds, the phone was picked up, and a familiar voice came from it. What do you want to talk to me about? These 5 simple words made me feel a little sad. Don't you want to ask who I am? A sneer came from the other end of the phone. I know, after all, how could I forget the humiliation of that year? I clenched my fists and mustered up the courage to speak. Can you lend me some money? What kind of relationship do you have with me? Why should I lend it to you? Just because? The words came to my lips but I couldn't say them. There was a slight breathing sound from the other end, as if it was waiting for me to say something. Just because we are old classmates, help me, old classmate? His voice was 2 points colder than before. You can borrow it if you want. At 8 o'clock in the evening, Marriott Bar 329 box, come in person. In the evening, I arrived at the bar on time and opened the box door. Heavy metal music stimulated my eardrums. Before coming, I had anticipated various situations, but the situation was unexpected. Sean was the only person sitting in the box, wearing a high-end suit, looking like he had just come down from a negotiation. He patted the sofa next to him, and his meaning was self-evident. I sat next to Sean and watched him hand me a microphone. Sing for me. I couldn't help but be full of questions. Come to the bar, to listen to a tone-deaf person singing? Rich people's hobbies are really strange. After all, Sean couldn't be unaware of my singing level, which is basically enough to make a dog cry. On my birthday before, I dragged Sean into a KTV and howled for 3 hours. As my only audience, since then, as long as I opened my voice, he immediately blocked his ears, and even developed a tacit understanding. I looked at him questioningly, but he closed his eyes and looked like he was listening carefully. Sing as long as you sing while I can lend you money. It's really embarrassing. But for the money, I endured it. After a song, cold sweat ran down my back, and the people next to me frowned. After singing 3 songs in a row, I was scared of myself because of the ghostly howling. Just then, the phone rang. Sean picked up the phone, and signaled me to continue with his eyes. I didn't dare to stop, so I had to continue singing. As soon as I opened my mouth, a scream suddenly came from the phone. Brother Jing, whose funeral did you go to? Why are people crying? Sean hung up the phone almost instantly and leaned back on the sofa. After singing 3 more songs, Sean finally opened his eyes and turned off the speakers. The room instantly returned to calm. Outside the door were people dancing on the dance floor, but inside the door was the calm before the storm. Sean didn't say anything, but I knew very well that he was angry. Although, I didn't know what he was angry about. Could it be because I sang too badly? Before I could ask, a waiter came in with a cart. The cart was full of a dazzling array of wines, all in glass, crystal clear and beautiful. Sean looked up at me. You gave me 1,000 as a breakup fee and now I'm giving it back to you. 10,000 for a glass of wine. How much do you want? Just drink it. To be honest, I can only drink 3 glasses. Luckily the wine in front of me was not full and I only took 2 or 3 sips of each glass. I took a deep breath. Deal. The strong wine rushed into my mouth and my throat felt burning. Every time I drank a glass, a face flashed in my mind. This 10,000 will be returned to my second uncle, this 10,000 will be returned to my cousin, and this 10,000 will be returned to my colleague. After drinking 1 glass after another, I felt a lot more relaxed. When did I become so good at drinking? I almost forgot. After the breakup, I bought a lot of wine and drank it at home. It seems that only when I get drunk, that person will not appear in my dreams. The alcohol stimulated my brain, and in my blurred vision, I seemed to see Sean walking towards me step by step. The next second, the cart in front of me was overturned. All the wine fell to the ground, and the ground was a mess. What are you doing? I still have a lot of wine to drink and a lot of money to pay back. I'm ready to go to the hospital for gastric lavage. But the cart was overturned, and I met Sean's eyes. He looked at me with an almost hateful look. I was pushed to the sofa. Are you so short of money? I was so short of money that I didn't want to be homeless. Okay, I have another way. Sean came close, and his warm breath sprayed on my face. Spend a night with me, and I can make up for any money your family owes. I didn't know what to say for a moment. Before coming here, I had a vague expectation in my heart. Because the most famous couples hotel in the city is above the bar. But I quickly rejected this idea, probably because I was holding on to the last bit of hope. I thought Sean would not treat me like this. He said, why, don't you want to? I pursed my lips and forced myself to smile. I am willing to offer myself to you. Sean stretched out his hand, and his cold fingers wandered on my face. The coolness passed through my skin and stimulated my brain. I never thought you would offer your love to someone with only a high school degree. I opened my mouth but didn't say anything, but tears kept falling. Sean suddenly let go of me and kicked the coffee table. I was awakened by the loud noise, and he grabbed the wine glass on the table and threw it to the ground, just like the tiger in the cage we saw at the zoo. He roared desperately, venting his dissatisfaction. Until everything on the table was smashed by him, Sean gradually calmed down and took out a check from his pocket. It was already signed, and the amount was 3 more than my breakup fee. Get lost. He threw the check to me and turned away. I sat there in a daze for a long time before I got up and left. As soon as I left the box, a man in a suit and leather shoes came to me. Ms. Aria, I'm Ken, the assistant to President Sean. President Sean said you were drunk and asked me to take you home. Ken drove me home, and the car was very quiet. I was silent for a long time, then asked, how long have you been with Sean? 5 years and 6 months. It must be difficult for him to start a business. The company's official website has information about President Sean's entrepreneurial history. Wow, a flawless answer. I didn't say anything until Ken suddenly called me before getting off the car. You haven't changed at all in these years. No wonder President Sean has never let go. Have you seen me? In a photo. He left this nonsense and drove away. Drinking doesn't taste good. One night, I had a splitting headache and vomited 3 times while holding the toilet. When I wiped my mouth, I suddenly found tears on my face. This scene is exactly the same as when I just broke up 8 years ago. The next day, I took the check to the bank to exchange it, and the whole process went smoothly. After all the debts were paid off, there was even a part left. I gave the money to my parents and told them my decision. Take this money. I will pay you alimony every month, and we will no longer be together. I will move out this week. My mother took the money, and the smile on her face froze. Arya, what are you talking about? We are a family, why are you so distant? No, you don't treat me as a family at all. Their relationship is so good that no one interferes. Including their daughter. From the beginning to the end, their family only has each other, not me. Arya, apologize to your mother quickly. You will hurt her mother's heart if you say such things. My mother's eyes were red and she threw herself into my father's arms. I looked at the affectionate couple and wanted to sneer. Have you ever thought that you would hurt my heart? 09, just like this time. Dad, if you really can't let it go, will you choose to jump from the second floor? You are just forcing me to come forward to solve the problem, and by the way, you can also let my mother take care of you, and the burden of both of you will be left on me alone. Shouldn't everyone face the problems together when there are problems in the family? Why have I been alone since I was a child? When I was in junior high school, my family's investment failed and was on the verge of bankruptcy. I didn't even have living expenses, and you and your wife were giving each other luxury gifts. We just want to maintain our relationship. Do you want to see your parents have a bad relationship and quarrel every day? My mother wiped her tears and looked at me in surprise. I know that at this moment I am probably an ungrateful person in her eyes, but what do you think of me? I have never celebrated a birthday since I was a child, because you said that day was my mother's suffering day. But are you not happy at all when I was born? If so, why did you give birth to me? The first birthday I celebrated in my life was given to me by Sean when I was 17. He spent half a month saving money and bought me a cake. We hid in the stairwell on the top floor of the teaching building. It was pitch black all around. In the darkness, I looked at the flickering flame of the candle in front of me, illuminating the cake. A pink bow, probably the aesthetic of straight men is like this, but I can still imagine Sean carefully choosing in front of the window. In the dim stairwell, Sean's face became blurred, but I will always remember those eyes, because they are clear and bright and there is my reflection in them. Sean said that he would accompany me on every birthday in the future. But this promise only lasted until I was 18. He worked as a tutor for 2 months and bought me a necklace. The moment I got the necklace, I felt that I had received the most precious gift in the world. At that time, I remembered a sentence. When I met you, I became very low, so low that I was in the dust. But my heart was happy, and flowers bloomed from the dust. My parents loved each other too much, and they couldn't share the extra love with me. I grew freely in the barren love until I met that person who made me bloom small flowers in the dust. It's a pity that I buried this love with my own hands. 10 I still moved away. Life was the same as usual. I didn't have to work part-time anymore and I worked in a law firm, but I never thought that I would see that man again. The man who should be in prison. Countless dark memories flooded into my brain and I was startled by cold sweat on my back. I rushed into the toilet without thinking, locked the door, and then sat on the toilet with a sense of relief. Why is he here? It took a long time before I went out again. My colleague said to me regretfully, just now a client came to consult about a problem. He has a criminal record, so there are many things to pay attention to. I wanted to ask you to listen to it when you bring the water in. Of course I know he has a criminal record, because I called the police and arrested him. What did he come to consult about? About starting a company. I nodded and said nothing more. I spent the whole afternoon in a trance until it was almost time to get off work. The supervising lawyer handed me a few documents and asked me to sort them out before get off work. There were not many documents, and I saw the name at the top at a glance. Warren. The name that was like a nightmare. It was my parents' 25th wedding anniversary. The domineering president article happened to be popular, and my father was deeply poisoned. He prepared a sea of flowers for my mother to celebrate. The young master of the wealthy Warren family Warren was also deeply poisoned. The two wanted to book the same restaurant at the same time and neither of them gave in. The feud was formed. At first, it was just that my father was robbed of 2 businesses. The other party was a wealthy family, not something we could compare to, but I just kept my anger to myself, but it didn't make him stop. I started to be followed, and I could always hear footsteps when I went home at night. After Sean knew about it, he stayed with me every night. Senior year was busy, so I cancelled the date after evening self-study, just wanting him to go home and rest early. One time I went home alone and the footsteps behind me were getting closer and closer, and several people blocked my way. Sean rushed out in time and helped me drive everyone away. Among them was Warren, who was wearing a black suit and a mask. I worried for 2 months and I clearly felt that someone was watching me around. But I called the police, but there was no evidence and the police could only tell me to be careful. Until the day before the college entrance examination, Sean and I made an appointment to buy a pen together. A car rushed straight towards me. Sean was injured and hospitalized and missed the college entrance examination. They did it on purpose, waiting for the day of my college entrance examination. Sean held my hand and comforted me to take the exam well. I didn't want their plan to fail, so I wiped my tears while taking the exam. The invigilator came to see me several times and asked if I needed help. Boundless hatred supported me, and I performed exceptionally well. After the exam, I rushed into the police station, rolled around in a rage and pretended to be pitiful, and pretended to be a college entrance examination candidate. The police said they would focus on investigating my case, but the car that hit us was a fake license plate car, and it would not be found overnight. I noticed that there were sneaky people near the hospital again, and I knew they would not let me go. They would even implicate Sean. I looked at the person still lying in the hospital and made a decision. Break up. On the day of the breakup, there was an inconspicuous van parked outside the restaurant, and it was the same type of car that hit us before. I didn't want to push away the person who was most important to me. But this was the only way I could protect him. It's just that I had clearly sent Warren to prison. The private detective investigated some of his dirty deeds, and I handed them all over to the police. I thought I would never see this person again in my life. Unexpectedly, I looked through Warren's information. He had a criminal record and had been in prison for several years. He had just been released on bail and was still in the observation period. Because of Warren, I didn't sleep all night. When I was reading the documents with dark circles under my eyes, I heard a voice behind me. Mr. Warren, if you have any questions, you can come to my office. I turned my head and met Warren's eyes. He followed the supervising lawyer. The moment our eyes met, he showed a cold smile, like a poisonous snake in the jungle. Who is this? This is Arya, the assistant lawyer of our law firm. Arya. He looked at me meaningfully and walked into the office. Just one look, I felt my hair stand up. Warren stayed in the firm for a long time. Before leaving, he walked up to me and said, Ms. Arya, can I have a few words with you? To be honest, I would rather never talk to him in my life. I stood under the surveillance camera on purpose. Warren glanced at the surveillance camera and sneered, Don't worry, I've fixed it. Besides, so many years have passed, I won't do this to you again. I just want to say that after so many years, you are still so beautiful, more beautiful than before. He glanced at my chest meaningfully, his eyes were obscene and disgusting. Warren is like my nightmare. So far, this nightmare has not ended. The next day after get off work, I found that my electric donkey was scratched. The original light green paint was scratched with many lines, and the tires were deflated. I asked the security guard, but the surveillance camera didn't capture it. Warren's face flashed in my mind. It happened that a message came from Sean on my phone. Are you free tonight? Let's go out for dinner. Warren's matter has not been resolved, but Sean and I haven't seen each other for too long. There is always a voice in my heart urging me. Go quickly. Sean didn't wear a suit today, just a simple white shirt, and his hair, which was usually combed meticulously, was finally let down. It instantly brought me back to high school. He handed me the menu. This is a Chinese restaurant. Don't you have Western food? I remember that Sean liked steak the most before, because he lived abroad for a while, and for some reason he quarreled with his family and returned home. If you don't like it, order something else. I was confused and ordered a few dishes at random. Sean sat opposite me, playing with the spoon with his slender fingers. Have you dealt with the family affairs? Yes, thank you. If he hadn't helped, I would probably still be working now. Then how are you going to thank me? This question was a bit of a test for me. After all, he is now rich in assets. What else does he need? I need a girlfriend or you. I froze in place, trying to find the joking smile on his face. I'm not kidding. You don't want to find someone who is just a hum and ha. I'm better than before. Aren't you angry about what happened in the past? I said such unpleasant words that I wanted to slap myself in the face when I woke up in the middle of the night. Angry. He lowered his eyes, but his low voice hit my brain directly. Angry so what? Living in anger all your life, don't you want to think about the future? Sean's words were forgiveness. I was about to speak, but my phone started vibrating one after another. The atmosphere was broken, and I glanced at my phone. The messages were all from an unfamiliar number, but the content of the messages was not unfamiliar at all. I'm sorry, what can I do to make you forgive us? My daughter is still in school and will take the college entrance examination soon. Please don't vent your anger on her. Now we live in a society ruled by law. It will not be good for you to do something out of line. These messages were all sent by my mother to Warren. After learning that I was being followed, my parents thought about it again and again, and decided to take the initiative to make peace. But some people have no moral bottom line. The phone was suddenly snatched away, and Sean glanced at the content on it, and his face gradually darkened. Is it Warren? Yes. How do you know his name? I didn't mention this matter to Sean, just because I didn't want to drag him into it. I'm a jerk. I still don't want to believe that you really want to break up with me. After a few years, I have some money and I found a private detective to investigate this matter. I was in shock for a long time and couldn't come back to my senses. Sean asked me to leave this matter to him. Just in case, I asked my parents to go somewhere else to avoid the limelight. Sean found me a house with a better safety factor. Thank you for helping me. Aren't we boyfriend and girlfriend? There's no need to say this. I haven't agreed to get back together yet. I looked up and saw Sean smile. But you agreed. I saw it in your eyes. Well, I would agree, but if the Warren thing is not resolved, we should not get back together. I don't want to drag him down. Heh. In just one simple word, I heard his rejection. 13 Since then, I have been extra careful every day when I go out, and my mind has been in a state of high concentration. I am exhausted physically and mentally on such days, although Warren has not harassed me all the time, as if he has disappeared. What I didn't expect was that Sean fell down before me. Ken called me and said that Sean was in the hospital. My heart thumped and I rushed into the hospital regardless of everything, thinking of countless possibilities in my mind. Sean must not be hurt again because of me. If it was Warren who did it, I would make him pay the price at all costs. When I rushed to the hospital, Sean was already asleep. He lay quietly on the bed, and there was no obvious abnormality except that he was a little thinner. President Sean is fine, he just went to the hospital because he was too tired. Why is he so tired? Is the company busy? Ken didn't say anything. Sean was still sleeping soundly. I didn't want to wake him up, so I had to leave first. When I was passing by the corridor, I heard voices inside. I didn't take it seriously until I heard Warren's voice. This old man won't let go until he dies, he's just thinking about his eldest son. I walked up quietly, and the voice came clearly through a door. President Warren also fell ill due to overwork. The company has encountered some problems recently. S.J. Group has been targeting our company for several years, and the recent offensive is particularly fierce. S.J.? Isn't it Sean's company? Before I could figure it out, Sean, who had just woken up in the hospital, sent me a message and disappeared. A week later, the news broke that the head of the wealthy Warren family had passed away, and a huge hole suddenly appeared in the Warren family's company, and shareholders withdrew money and ran away. Warren's grandfather also died of a heart attack on the spot because of this news. It is said that Warren has more than 10 children in this generation. Now everything is falling apart, and there is constant infighting between brothers. I called Sean and he finally answered this time. The matter has been resolved. Warren has several brothers above him, and he can't even protect himself. I have found out that he plans to go abroad. I guess he doesn't want to be implicated by debt. I was relieved and never wanted to see this person again. But things didn't go as I wished. That night, I was followed. On the way to a date with Sean, a group of people rushed out just as we walked to the entrance of the park. Warren, the leader, was looking at me gloomily. I didn't expect it, it's quite powerful. I really regret not hitting you to death at that time. Warren rushed towards me with his fists clenched. Sean was entangled by several people and couldn't get away. I saw the obscenity in Warren's eyes, raised my foot and kicked him to the ground with a roundhouse kick. After breaking up, I sent Warren to prison with my own hands and began to study Sonda hard. For 8 years, I went to find a coach whenever I had free time. Warren deliberately chose a place without surveillance, and I let go and hit the vital points. I raised my hand and punched him hard on the temple, making him scream in pain, and then gave him a shoulder throw. Sirens sounded not far away, and several gangsters were so scared that they immediately stopped. I stood up and ran directly outside. Warren, with red eyes, took out a dagger from his pocket and chased me. Bitch, you forced me to do this. I ran out of the park like crazy. Warren caught up with me, and I punched him in the eye. The cold light of the dagger flashed and pierced into my thigh. Bitch, this is the end of going against me. I grabbed his hand with one hand, trying not to pull out the dagger, and sneered at him. Look up and see what's above your head? Warren raised his eyes, and there was a huge surveillance camera above, recording our every move. At the last moment when the police arrived, I used up my last bit of strength to speak. Intentional murder, attempted murder, mafia organization, you're done. When I woke up again, I was already in the hospital, and the police took a statement from me. I told him everything that happened a few years ago. Warren was already in the observation stage and he had the support of Warren's family back then, but this time no one could help him. I deliberately induced him to chase me, and I could completely avoid the dagger, but if I want him to sentence me more severely, I have to see blood. After the police finished taking the statement and left, Sean looked very unhappy. It's too dangerous. You don't take your life seriously. I held his hand and found that his hand was very cold. Don't worry, I'm really fine. After all, we still have to be together. He suddenly raised his head and met my gaze. Didn't I say that we should be together and never separate again? Tears suddenly fell, and I realized that Sean's eyes were red at some point. Yes, never separate again. He reached out and hugged me tightly. We felt each other's warmth and enjoyed the sunshine pouring in from the ward at this moment. Imagine our future. Extra Sean's perspective. It rained heavily on the day of the breakup. Just like this heavy rain without warning. The breakup was also so sudden. We were still discussing celebrating the end of the college entrance examination yesterday. I know that the car accident may have scared her, and I want to take her to have a good rest and relax. As for my college entrance examination, I can take it again next year. When she said breakup, she seemed relieved. Is our love so heavy for her? For the first time, I felt that I didn't understand her at all. How could the person who said she loved me suddenly stop loving me? When the money fell in front of me, I knew she was serious. Was she angry? Yes. I hated myself more for not living up to her expectations. We agreed to go to university together. I broke my promise. I walked in the rain for a long time. I had a high fever that night. I woke up 3 days later, and there was no text message on my phone. In the middle of the night, I finally couldn't help crying. I went abroad and met the person I didn't want to see, my father. Because he abandoned my mother, he became the person I hated the most. Even after my mother died, I didn't want to see him again. But at this moment, I needed his help. Perhaps out of guilt, he quickly helped me prepare a sum of money and a letter of recommendation, and I was arranged to go to a university abroad. I suppressed my heart with endless studies. I wanted to fly back to find her. I wanted to enjoy the same blue sky and white clouds with her and feel the same temperature with her. The first pot of gold I made on Wall Street was more than I thought. I took the money and flew back to China and stood at the gate of a university waiting for a day. Finally, I saw her from a distance. She had lost a lot of weight. Was it because the food in the school cafeteria was not good? There was no smile on her face, and I suddenly felt a little happy. See, you can't live well without me. I took the money and found a very famous private detective to investigate the past. Because the things on the day of the breakup were recalled countless times by me. I thought about every micro-expression of hers. She must be hiding something from me. I worked with this fluke and hope. When I got the results, I suddenly didn't dare to open it. What if it was just my self-love? Maybe it really didn't love anymore. The result was within my expectations, but it still surprised me a little. I was disappointed with her concealment. What couldn't she tell me? From then on, the Warren family became my target. Any problems were caught by me and magnified infinitely. Until I received the news that her family went bankrupt. I saw her in the parking lot, and her appearance even made me a little unrecognizable. My phone finally rang. The phone that I had left idle for many years but always carried with me. The phone recorded the meaningless text messages we sent to each other, the music and movies we shared, the countless photos we took. These things were enough to get me through every difficult late night. There was only one contact in my hand. I was thinking about whether to teach her a lesson and answer the phone when she called again. But my hand was already one step faster. Admit it, Sean. Actually, you are afraid. Afraid that after missing this call, there will be no next one. In fact, what I want to know most is whether she has regretted it. Seeing me now, do you regret pushing me away? I asked her to sing in front of me, but I could no longer find the feeling of the past when I closed my eyes. She was trying hard to sing the song well. The person who could have held in my ear for 3 hours has become cautious now. I don't like her cautiousness. She is silently telling me that I am no longer the person who can make her take off her disguise. I have tasted the wine brought by the waiter, and the alcohol content is not high, but she has a low alcohol tolerance. I just want to see what her expression will be. But she drinks one glass after another desperately. Anger spread in my heart and we seem to be getting further and further away. Sleep with me for one night, and I can make up for any money your family owes. When I said this, I was looking forward to it. I expected her to slap me hard and tell me that I was wishful thinking. But she didn't, she was crying silently. Has she compromised so much now? Once I was secretly happy because she was not doing well. But when I saw that she was really not doing well, I began to feel distressed. I would rather she was still as cold as moonlight and unattainable as she was in the past. I don't want her to compromise with me now. At least this can prove that her leaving was worth it. I had prepared the check long ago. There were many bad guys in the bar, so I asked Ken to take her home. Tonight, I really don't have the courage to face her. I don't want to delve into the right and wrong of the past. I just want to have a tomorrow with her. I received the news as soon as Warren was released from prison. This name I hate deeply. I had everything under control of the Warren family. I did not hesitate to take action and tried my best to bring down the Warren family. Only then did I understand her painstaking efforts. Because of the big move, I was targeted by the Warren family. I didn't dare to contact her at all and I didn't dare to let her come to the company. I think I was wrong in the past. If I were in that position, I would also push people away without hesitation. Things have already happened, and there is no point in recalling the past. I just want to work with her to a better future. Ken's perspective. Today I came to SJ for an interview. I heard that the founder is very young and has become an outstanding figure in the industry in just a few years. I finally met him during the last round of interviews. He sat in the middle with a strong aura that could not be ignored. What surprised me just now was that he was too young. My competitor was a beautiful woman. I saw Sean look at her several times. She was excellent in all aspects and seemed to have won the boss's favor. I was even ready to be eliminated. But soon I received a call from the HR. On the day of reporting, I shared my uneasy mood and the HR patted my shoulder and said that he had known that I would be kept. I asked the reason and the HR just chuckled. President Sean is clean and self-disciplined, and most of the people around him are men. I did see the woman's obsessed look at the boss on the day of the interview. But wouldn't it be better to have a beautiful woman who admires you by your side? Soon I learned the truth. One afternoon, President Sean was rarely angry. This man has always regarded work as his life, as if he is a robot, and he rarely shows emotions. Even last time a shareholder provoked him, he just laughed it off. Although the shareholder was kicked out later, but it was the first time I saw him so angry. The reason was that the cleaner accidentally knocked the phone on the table off while cleaning the office. This phone seemed to be rarely used and never turned on, but President Sean never left it. The cleaner was a young woman who said aggrievedly that she could pay for it but was driven out by President Sean. The phone was broken into a crack and President Sean carefully put it in a box and asked me to take it to be repaired, no matter how much it cost. Before leaving, he repeatedly reminded me, "Tell me any calls or messages." I accidentally saw the wallpaper of the phone, which was a girl with a high ponytail and school uniform. I suddenly remembered that on the day of the interview, the girl being interviewed looked a bit like the girl on the phone. No wonder President Sean looked at it several times. At the same time, I was also curious about who the person in the phone was. After President Sean's company grew to a certain scale, he began to take action against the Warren family. In fact, their business would not hinder us, but President Sean still took drastic measures and was ruthless. I definitely followed the right person. Because he is an ambitious capitalist who is strategizing without emotion. I have been following him for so long and I have never seen any woman around him. He even keeps his distance from female partners. Until that night, he asked me to drive him to the bar. I waited at the door, and when he came out, he looked more lonely than ever. "Please help me take her home." I nodded, and when I saw the people in the box, I roughly knew that President Sean was abnormal today. He usually likes to work overtime, but today he actually left work early and went to the styling studio to get his body shaped. The woman in front of me seemed to be the person on President Sean's phone. After sending the person home safely, I drove back to find President Sean. He squatted decadently on the side of the road, his hair was messy, and there were cigarette butts on the ground. "Are you busy tonight? Have a drink with me." President Sean drank a lot by himself, and I knew their story for the first time, the person buried in his heart. It turns out that President Sean is not a person who doesn't care about feelings, but he has given all his feelings to one person. A tiger in the heart can smell the rose. No wonder he keeps clinging to the Warren family. Has President Sean ever thought about getting back together? I have, but I'm afraid she doesn't like me anymore after all these years. It turns out that such a person is also afraid. President Sean, if you knew about the Warren family back then, would you still agree to break up with Miss Aria? President Sean was silent for a long time and most of the cigarette in his hand was burned. He looked at the ceiling as if missing someone. I respect all her choices. If I could have predicted, I might have dressed up well that day, bought a bouquet of flowers and said goodbye to her. But I know President Sean won't do that, he just regrets. Regret that the goodbye was too hasty. They won't separate because they love too deeply. They have already fallen deeply and sunk together.